9 races down, and it all boils down to this. The final round of the GT World Challenge Esports Europe Sprint Series from Spa-Francorchamps. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will crown a new champion. And to talk you through all of the action will be myself, Paul Jeffrey. And alongside me, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ben Constanduros.
Oh, it's been a while, and I'm so excited to get back to Spa. I think the last time I did a commentary with you was at Spa-Francorchamps for a different series. It's my favourite track in the real world. I love going there. I love the layout. I've raced there myself, albeit in a smart car. And I can't wait to see the culmination of this series that I've both commentated and followed here at this circuit tonight in some quite interesting circumstances.
It is indeed. It is a great track to go motor racing. And as you say, tonight we will crown a champion. James Baldwin is the man on form and our new championship leader, just 2 points ahead of David Tonizza for the Ferrari Esports team. Tonizza is ahead of Kevin Sigge, who is now out of the championship race in third position for Team Redline. And Nils Naujoks, having a very strong end to the season, lines up fourth in the championship standings with 77 points against his name. The second Ferrari Driver Academy Esports driver Giovanni Di Salvo has work to do in fifth position, and once again, unfortunately, our dominant man at the start of the season, Josh Rogers for VRS Coanda Simsport, will not be present today. Eamon Murphy for Yas Heat McLaren is seventh in the championship, just ahead of Jeremy Butlu for VRS Coanda Simsport, with Dare McCormack and Maciej Malinowski rounding out the top 10 in the championship standings, heading in to this final race of the season. There are 25 points on offer, don't forget, for race victory, so plenty can happen at the front and at the back of the championship standings. Artie Camera being one of those drivers that will be looking for a strong end to their year and to move themselves up the order. Nicholas Hoburn, 12th position in the championship standings, just ahead of R8G Esports Tobias Fether, P13. Dennis Schoninger in 14th position from Bastian Richter in the Unicorn of Love Aston Martin Vantage GT3. Nikodem Wisniewski for Williams Esports has had a difficult season. He'll be hoping for a big result today, as will Sam Bagnall in the Porsche 911. Yuri Petrochenko, 18th position with 12 points. A gaggle of drivers on 12 points down there. Luca Lozio for Jean Alesi Esports Academy is 19th. And then Matthias Tiskovic for the DV1 Triton Racing Team rounds out that championship order. And Ben, we have got such a fight. Let's have a quick look actually at the qualification. Jakob Osterman is a man on pole position for Lamborghini. A beautiful result for him. Best of the season. Nicholas Hoburn joins him on the front row of the grid. Strong day for the BMW G2 Esport team in qualification. Artie Camera heads Nils Naujoks on row 2. They'll be looking for a good result today. Dennis Schoninger is fifth on the grid, just ahead of Unicorns of Love Tobias Gronewold in P6. Michael Tauscher, 7th position, the fastest of the Porsches in qualification earlier today. Giovanni Di Salvo, a good starting place in 8th position as he looks to improve his overall championship standings. Eamon Murphy for Yas Heat McLaren is 9th, and rounding out that top 10 is Maciej Malinowski in the number 992 Porsche 911. One of our championship protagonists is David Tonizza, 11th place and outside of the points on the grid. Much work to do for the FDA Esports driver, Dare McCormack, alongside for Williams Esport. The third of the BMW G2 Esport cars in Gregor Schill lines up 13th. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, that car, number 28, your championship leader, James Baldwin, 14th on the grid. Matthias Tiskovic is 15th, just ahead of King in P16th, with Aonori Rose 17th on the grid. The Jean Alesi Esports Academy driver has work to do from that position. Mattia Bonacorsi lines up in 19th place on the grid, and in P20 we have got Victor Barrier in the Lexus RCF GT3. Miato is 21st ahead of a very, very disappointed Kevin Sigge. There we can see the McLaren Redline driver 22nd on the grid. Sigge is just ahead of Tariq Gamel, another one of the Lamborghinis, this time for Williams Esport. They've got a lot of work to do, but they've seen pace in that car, courtesy of our pole position man. Just behind him is Latowski in 24th position. Robbie Stapleford, another difficult day for the Rocket Sim Sport driver, down in 25th. 26th position is Nikolai, just ahead of Andrea Benedetti in P27. Benedetti, another driver I'm sure will be looking to make amends for a difficult qualification, as Weiss and Seravioli in 28th and 29th. And rounding out the top 30, a bumper grid we have today here at Spa-Francorchamps is the Bentley Continental 141 of Pitterick in Murano, 31st ahead of Brambilla in P32. In 33rd position is Geraldis in the Audi R8 LMS Evo, the number 111 machine that you're about to see come onto your screen on the left hand side there. Merles in the Ferrari. It's nice to see another Ferrari not run by the FDA Esports Academy team, but they've had a difficult day in 34th position. Durkop in P35, another one of the Lamborghinis with work to do. Apostle down in 36 for the BMW M6 number 5 machine that you see on your screen there. Charlie Crossland, 37th position. We are not used to seeing Crossland so far down the running order, so there is work to do there in the Mercedes. Catano, P38, just ahead of 39th position, and Tamarchi. And as we get to the bottom of the grid, we've got Luca Lozio in 40th, Katichu in 41st, Konashavin in 42nd, Reikhanov 43rd, and the back of the grid, 1.6 seconds away from the ultimate pace, is Nicholas Hillebrand in that beautiful Honda Jazz Pro Europe Honda NSX GT3. Ooh, take a breath. Ben Constant-Juris, that's a grid of some size and some quality.
And the quality is absolutely displayed by the fact that 35 cars are spread over 1 second. And as you mentioned, Nicholas Hillebrand at the back of the field in 44th position. 1.6 seconds separates him and the pole man. That is just incredible. And what also is a pretty long circuit, over 7 kilometres in length. This isn't a short Red Bull Ring style of track. This is a 2-minute 20 lap, and they're still separated by such a small margin. Now, I guess because this is a favourite of all drivers, this is a place where all of these guys will have done many laps and know well. It looks to be dry, which is good news. It looks to be dry for the whole race, which is good news, and it should be a fair fight. What I'm concerned about is our championship battle between David Tonizza and James Baldwin. Tonizza in 11th, Baldwin in 14th. In not the middle of the pack, but still with traffic around them, they need to be super, super careful in those first couple of corners. Eau Rouge, Radillon, and the braking into Les Combes, and then all the side-by-side through that, because it's so easy to get caught up in trouble. And there is Tonizza in the right-hand corner, looking pretty chilled right now, having to switch disciplines over these last couple of months because of his dedication to the F1 Esports, which is much, much different to what he feels in ACC in this SRO Esports Grand Final. And James Baldwin doing the same thing. He's doing it with the Le Mans Virtual, so he's crossing over from R Factor 2 into this. All of these guys now very multidisciplined, very multi-platformed, and absolutely showing that this is the pinnacle of esports right here, with those guys doing that and this at the same time.
Yeah, it's fabulous to see, and as you say, the quality and the spread of lap time in this field is just sensational. 20 corners at Spa-Francorchamps, 1 second covering the top 35 drivers. You can afford to lose less than a tenth of a second per corner, per acceleration, per braking zone, per turn into the apex. If you lose a tenth of a second every time, you're going to be so far away from everybody else, you may as well not even turn up to this competition. And Ben, it's something that we've seen throughout the season in the European Sprint and Endurance Series, in the Asia, the Americas and the British as well. Such a high level of talent. There is nothing separating these drivers. I mean, look at Osterman, pole position, dominated pole position. That's his highest qualifying result, and last race Lamborghini were nowhere.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of balanced performance that comes into all of these races. Every single track, every single time we go racing, it slightly varies to try and keep all of the different marks as competitive as possible, but ultimately they always will favour one over the other, and so we do see a slight variance. Fantastic for Osterman to be on the pole. Fantastic for Holborn to be in second position, as you said, something like 14th, 15th position in the championship. So names that we don't necessarily recognise so much on that front row. But then we've got the two BMWs alongside each other, the two teammates at G2 Esports, Arthur Kammerer and Nils Naujoks, and Nils has had a much better second half of the season than he had the first half. And whilst he can't win the championship, he'll be looking for a really, really strong result. In fact, those two teammates did the exact same lap time in qualifying, a 2:17.088. So that is how competitive the two of them are with each other. Even if Kammerer was faster in certain sectors than Naujoks, it was absolutely the same time as they came to the line.
And that is going to be fascinating to see how that battle unfolds. Of course, the BMW drivers not afraid to get rough and ready with some of their rivals we've seen so far this season. But now the formation lap for the final time this year is coming to an end. The cars are lining up in 2x2 formation. This is the big moment. This is what the entire season rests upon. The next 60 minutes. We have gone a long way to get to this stage. We started at Monza on the 21st of May and now we're here at the beautiful Spa-Francorchamps Grand Prix circuit in Belgium to conclude what has been an incredible year of racing. Jakob Osterman is our pole position man. He leads the field round La Source hairpin. Remember, we're using the GT endurance layout of this track. Nicholas Holborn in the 122 Audi R8 LMS will be keen to make advantage of his ideal racing line going in to the Eau Rouge and Radion complex of corners. Can Osterman convert the Lamborghini's pole position into a race lead? We are about to go green for the final time in the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Series. Great start from Osterman. He immediately takes a race lead. Holborn slots into second position. The two BMWs squabbling amongst each other. Everybody trying to find a bit of real estate on the run-up Eau Rouge for the very first time. This is the danger time for every single driver, including our championship leading contact with a Porsche. Further down the order, that was one of the Ferrari Driver Academy cars. They get away with that one. Meanwhile, Holborn looking down the inside into Le Con. There's no space there between the Lamborghini. Lamborghini goes wide onto the gravel as well. So Nicholas Holborn now is in an attacking position. Osterman to the outside, tries to hold on, runs out of racetrack. Nicholas Holborn, arms out, elbows out, takes an early race lead. The BMWs are battling amongst themselves as well. That is Arthur Kammerer ahead of Nils Naujoks. Dennis Schoninger trying to buy into this one as well. There is our championship second place man, David Tonizza, rubbing shoulders once again with Eamon Murphy. Tonizza not leaving anything on the table, and Ben, they are very intense opening moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Great start from Tonizza, up from 11th position to 9th spot. Eamon Murphy, who is a teammate to James Baldwin, although they are officially in different teams, trying to prevent Tonizza from keeping hold of that 9th position because Baldwin has not made a good start. Baldwin is down in 14th position and running wide. He's going to lose more positions here as round the outside comes one of the Mercedes. He's from way farther back. One of the Williams Mercedes, that is, and James Baldwin with contact also with Petrenko. We saw him bouncing off the Porsche, so lots and lots of drama along the Kemmel Straight for the first time, and I wonder how much damage James Baldwin has, and that car has definitely got damage. That Aston Martin looks very bent.
Yeah, that's the Ballas Esports Aston Martin running wide and potentially straight down to pit lane. Let's have a look now. Let's pick up our championship leader, James Baldwin. 12th position so far, so had a bit of a recovery drive. But David Tonizza pulling out all the stops from 11th on the grid to 7th on the racetrack.
And De Salvo went wide there, so that's allowed... I think De Salvo was attacking the Porsche of Tauscher, and that's allowed Tonizza up to 7th position. We saw the two Ferraris... we saw the Ferrari off the bus stop chicane and we didn't see the Porsche, but Tonizza up to 7th now, and that is definitely a bit of power play from FDA there to allow Tonizza as many positions as possible.
Absolutely, he'll be hoping though Giovanni De Salvo closes back up again to act as a rear gunner, give him some protection. But look there, Baldwin running over the escape road. That's the Mercedes and Williams Esport in the background off the racetrack, but James Baldwin on the attack now. Just ahead is Giovanni De Salvo. Remember, teammate of our second place championship man. James Baldwin will be very, very nervous as De Salvo goes around the outside but runs out of racetrack on the BMW. That is a disappointing bit of manoeuvre there for De Salvo. He needs to keep it Ferrari nice and clean at this stage in the race. The longer he can hold up James Baldwin behind him, the better. Gregor Schill also just ahead as well. So Schill in the third of the third of the G2 Esports BMWs getting involved in the action. King starting to buy in as well as the top running Honda NSX. So Darren King having another good race, but oh, this is for James Baldwin. This is not the start of the race he needed. He's in a very difficult position now. Fast cars behind him and the teammate to your championship rival ahead. And David Tonizza is running away with it up in 7th.
You make so much time up, you make so many positions up in the first couple of laps of a race because everyone is frenetically out of track position. But now as it starts to settle down, Baldwin's going to find it harder and harder and harder to make up these positions from 12th position. Tonizza 7th behind Nils Naujoks, who hasn't made a particularly good start. Naujoks down in 6th position. Remember, he started on the second row of the grid alongside his teammate Artur Kamara, who is still in 3rd spot. So that's going to be difficult for Tonizza to try and pass Naujoks, but Baldwin is going to have a really hard time here. He's got an FDA Ferrari right in front of him, and De Salvo will be playing the team game here. He will make sure that Ferrari is as wide as possible to stop James Baldwin from getting past, although trying to challenge the BMW is not necessarily a particularly sensible thing. Round the outside comes James Baldwin to run very, very deep, but he has the inside line for La Source. Oh, and that's an easy pass for James Baldwin, and that's a very, very bad move from Gianni De Salvo.
Yeah, absolutely. That is giving away a present that he cannot afford to do to James Baldwin. Is the Ferrari Driver Academy star Giovanni De Salvo. So one position further up the road. We know, unfortunately, that the BMW G2 Esports machine of Gregor Schill doesn't quite have the pace of his two teammates as well. So that should be relatively easy pickings for James Baldwin. Remember, 2 points separate our championshippers. Now this is for the race lead. This is Osterman from pole position. Drop down into 2nd behind Oben, using all of the performance of the Lamborghini. Has he gone too deep into Lecombe? Yes, he has. He has to take to that bit of a skate road once again. And Nicholas Hoban just about holding on. But while these two squabble, look behind you in 3rd position. Artur Kamara starting to get involved. BMW have been competitive in the last few races, and Artur Kamara fancies his chances of ending the year on a high with a podium at least, or maybe even a race victory. Giovanni De Salvo, the number 4 Ferrari, back ahead of James Baldwin. So Baldwin's attack on Gregor Schill did not work out at all, and that is Ferrari advantage.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I think Baldwin has tried to get past Gregor Schill at some point. It hasn't worked out. It's compromised his speed. And De Salvo has just had more momentum up the Kemmel Straight and been able to easily pass Baldwin. So that hasn't worked out for James at all. He needed to check out and get away from this Ferrari, because in theory, really, Giovanni De Salvo's role this race is to make it as hard as possible for Baldwin to collect points, especially as Tonizza is ahead and is up the road and ahead of teammate Murphy as well. So we understand there was a big old crash a little bit earlier on at the no-name corner. We lost many cars there, but here is Dennis Schoinger slipstreaming Artur Kamara. More pace here, and I don't think our leaders have got particularly good pace right now. These guys behind look really, really threatening.
Yeah, this is exactly what we need to see for a great race. Schoininger now goes to the outside. That becomes the inside of the bus stop chicane. That is a position gain. Good move by Dennis Schoininger there in the Audi. 2 Audis now in the top 3 of the running order. Artur Kamara down into 4th position, and actually coming under pressure now from Unicorns of Love driver Tobias Gronewold. Had plenty of pace as Gronewold so far this season. Not quite the look that goes with it on occasion, but he'll be hoping for a solid result here at the final round. 5th position at this moment in time, but he's closing down, and here we go, instant on lap 1 involving cars 95 and 992, a 10-second penalty for car number 95. That is David Tonizza. David Tonizza, 10-second penalty. This, Ben Constanduras, could be the championship deciding moment.
Well, we saw that there was Porsche contact with James Baldwin, and we saw that it was with a Ferrari initially along the Kemmel Straight. But I assumed initially that it was teammate Giovanni De Salvo, not Tonizza, and he's going to have a 10-second penalty. Lamborghini on the grass on the inside, either got contact or lost it, but round the outside comes Huben and into the lead. Audi ahead of Lamborghini, and again inviting Kamara into the party. Further back, it's side by side. I think Tobias Grunwald under attack from Nils Naujoks, but now Tonizza needs a really big result. Big battle for 2nd position.
Look at this one. This is Dennis Schoeninger down the inside, brave as you could possibly be. The Lamborghini's going to run very quickly out of road, which he does. So Nicholas Auburn's our race leader. That is the Audi of the number 9 car. That is Dennis Schoeninger all the way up into second place. Now the Lamborghini dropping down the running order, but it does seem to have the pace to keep with these cars, so just needs to calm down. Does Jacob Osterman get his composure back and start moving back up the order? Artie Camera just becoming a little detached from this fight, down in 4th position. Camera leading a train with Nils Naujoks, his teammate, in 6th. Tobias Grunwald in 6th position, Nils Naujoks in 5th. The 10-second penalised, David Tonizza. There is David Tonizza now. Michael Tosha, we're riding on board. He'll be well aware that a 10-second penalty will be applied to that Ferrari ahead. David Tonizza, no doubt, will be talking to his team strategist, trying to work out what the best play is at this stage in the race. But for the championship, Ben, that is so unfortunate. Tonizza needed to get his elbows out. Unfortunately, now he's getting shuffled down the running order. That is Tauscher making his way past. Thank you very much. This is not good for David Tonizza. It looked so strong, didn't it, at the start of the race, and now it's all ravelling very quickly indeed.
Well, let's not give up yet. Remember, we've got a long race. We're only 10 minutes into this one, and we've got a pit stop. There's so much drama going on. We've got a relatively slow Lamborghini at the head of the field that seems to be compressing everyone behind. And look how much our leader has checked out from that battle already. So a 10-second penalty by the end of a 1 hour race can really be nothing. So let's see how it works out for the championship.
And this is the Lamborghini against Dennis Schoeninger again, now for second position. Job done nice and early before we even get to the braking zone for Jakob Osterman. Can he get the car turned in? Yes, he can. This time he stays between the rumble strips on the left and right. So now in second position once again is Jakob Osterman. Dennis Schoeninger moved himself down into 3rd place. Artie Cameron, Nils Naujoks, the 2 BMWs, trying to find a way past Apostle now. 28th position, that is at the top of Eau Rouge Radion. So there's been a bit of contact there in one of the most dangerous spots on this, the Spa-Francorchamps Grand Prix circuit. But let's cycle back to this race leading battle while the squabble continues for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th place. That is allowing Nicholas Aubern plenty of free air to start to check out. 1.4 seconds after 4 laps is the advantage of the Audi man. These guys need to sort themselves out and decide what they're going to do. Otherwise, our race leader is going to have a very nice and handy advantage by the time we start to think about pit stops in 25 minutes or so.
Baldwin is still down in 12th position though, and he's not part of this queue of cars. So it's all is not lost. You know, points are not awarded to many drivers in this championship. You really only get points for the top echelon, the top positions in the race, and so Baldwin could still not be scoring anything, and Tonizza could be scoring some points. Okay, with that 10-second penalty right now, that wouldn't be the case. The field is pretty compressed, but by the time we get to the end, once they've cleared this Lamborghini, and it really does feel as though Osterman has nailed a lap in qualifying, but doesn't have that race pace. And once these guys have managed to clear him, I think the field spread is going to be quite large, and so it'll be how quickly can you clear the Lamborghini to really establish your race.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to passing out on circuit. That is going to be what makes or breaks the race for all of these drivers out on the track. Nicholas Aubern at the moment, currently our race leader, 1.7 seconds is the advantage now for the 1-2-2. Jakob Osterman that we're looking at now. Look at the picture in pictures. He concentrates through Eau Rouge and Radion. The Lamborghini, not traditionally a fast car in this championship, but courtesy of an outstanding lap in qualifying and of course a revised balance of performance. It's been a great performance for the number 71 machine. Osterman just having enough of an advantage down the Camel Straight and into Le Comte to hold that position. In 3rd position, Dennis Schoeninger having a very good race indeed in the Audi ahead of the 2 BMWs of Artie Camera, Nils Naujoks, 4th and 5th position. Tobias Grunwald in position 6 for the Unicorns of Love Aston Martin, the number 52 car just ahead of David Tonizza, and there is James Baldwin still squabbling away, still nipping at the heels of Giovanni De Salvo. Now Ben, talk us through what's going to be happening over at the Ferrari Driver Academy eSport team. They're going to be aware that there's 10 seconds coming. Oh, there we go. That is Eamon Murphy running wide on No Name, making contact with the barriers. So this little fight suddenly has become, instead of 11th and 12th, it is 10th and 11th. And Murphy, is he out of the race? Is that damage? Too much damage?
He ran wide out of Speaker's Corner and then almost didn't look as though he had steering connection through No Name. He does have steering connection because he steers away from the track, but a weird accident. You never see people losing it on the left-hand side there. He then crossed No Name across the circuit on the grass. So unfortunately, Baldwin has lost his teammate, his helper, in this race. Baldwin entered obviously under McLaren's shadow, Murphy under Yas Heat, but it's both managed by Veloce, so they are under the same stable. What I love to see in that inset that we had just a second ago was the amount of communication that these guys have with their teams. And as you quite rightly mentioned, FDA, Ferrari Driver Academy, have a plenty of management watching the race, working out the strategy and communicating with drivers. It's not a case that these boys are on their own in their bedrooms in the dark. They have a team around them looking after them. This is the pinnacle of esports right here, and we are seeing some of the very best drivers. We've got James Baldwin, who is a world's fastest gamer, the season 2 that competition happened, and David Tonizza, who has been the F1 esports world champion. And we got a 5-second penalty also for 259, who does not feature in the top 25 positions for contact.
Yep, so the stewards busy in the background, of course. Anybody new to SRO competition, we have trackside stewards that are watching each and every incident and metering out punishments as required. So James Baldwin loses a teammate but gains a position on the track. Some you win, some you lose. At this moment in time, he's in 11th place, outside of the points paying positions. Remember, the top 10 are where the points are scored. What needs to happen in order for James Baldwin to win the championship is to lose less than 2 points against David Tonizza. He holds a 2-point advantage in the championship. Now, if things stay as they are, plus David Tonizza's 10-second penalty, that would be enough for James Baldwin to take this championship. But as Ben says, it's a long race, 45 minutes still to go. A mandatory pit stop must be served. And Ben, we've seen it so many times this season, haven't we? The pit stop cycle is where things very often change and completely alter the outlook of the race.
So what needs to happen here for Ferrari Driver Academy is that we still have Giovanni De Salvo ahead of James Baldwin. Giovanni De Salvo, recent 1-year-old driver to FDA, so relatively new to the team, and not necessarily, one of the top drivers. Tonizza is the main man. Brendan Lee is also their main man in F1 esports. Tonizza, De Salvo is a supporting driver. Actually got that drive because he won the Ferrari esports championship, which was held on ACC or AC, I think actually, and so he is playing the Valtteri Bottas role here. He is playing the supporting act. He needs to slow Baldwin down without letting Baldwin past, create as big a gap as possible for Tonizza, so that Tonizza can still score some points, as you say, and take away that 2-point gap from Baldwin. He's in a great position to do so. He needs to be wise in the way he does it. And here is another massive team in the world of esports. Team Redline, Kevin Siggy trying to go around the outside here of Rose, failing there, but on the, inside line to not really a corner. Has he got enough momentum to do it before Eau Rouge? Because if he hasn't, side by side is not a particularly nice place to be, but they are fair to each other, and on this platform you can cut the corner and it's not too bad. But presumably Siggy will now pick up a slipstream. Actually, he's lost a position to Stapleford, who comes around the outside in the Jensen Button Rocket Esports livery, and may take a second position into the braking zone.
That is intelligent from young Robbie Stapleford there. Saw the battle unfold, allowed it to do what it needs to do, and took advantage. Meanwhile, look at this, Giovanni De Salvo. A few moments ago we saw him almost side by side with Gregor Schill in 9th position. So De Salvo is in a difficult place, as Ben says quite rightly. De Salvo's main job will be to hold up James Baldwin behind, but Gregor Schill is holding them all up at this moment in time, as Terry Gamel is just ahead of a couple of squabbling cars. That is Barrier and Mariano in 20th and 21st position, making contact with each other. Eamon Murphy, by the way, is in pit road, so he escaped to the pit lane. That will be, I believe, the last we see of Eamon Murphy and Yas Heat McLaren this season. So a disappointing time for the driver. I'm just hearing in my ear actually this pedal has broken on his hardware, so a mechanical failure of the sim racing variety for Eamon Murphy. A disappointing and expensive end to the season.
I mean, imagine managing to snap your brake pedal with power that you're smashing it. I mean, obviously he got into the Kemmel, onto the Kemmel straight, into Les Combes, smashed the pedal as he's been doing every lap. And a lot of these guys will have that pedal set very, very hard, as you would expect in a real car. There's Nils Naujoks, who has driven some real cars, and he may well have his pedal set up very hard. If you are just an esports racer and have never driven a race car, then you might have it set up pretty soft. But those that have done any kind of real driving will see the benefit in having it really hard, so that when you get to Les Combes, you literally stamp on it like it's a wall. And of course, at some point, pedal says no, and unfortunately that's what's happened to Eamon Murphy tonight. Snapped it in two, doesn't have any ability to brake, can steer, but obviously needs to be out, because no braking is kind of dangerous around here.
It is indeed. Now here we go. This is DeSalvo and James Baldwin. Baldwin is as close as he's ever been at this stage. We run down the Kemmel Straight. A good overtaking opportunity presents itself into Le Combe. The Ferrari is fast in a straight line. Baldwin does not have the horsepower underneath him to get alongside, even with a slipstream of that 488 Ferrari GT3 Evo, and that is a relief for Giovanni DeSalvo. He's very, very vulnerable to an overtake with the power of the slipstream here at Spa-Francorchamps in GT3 cars. So it's good news for Ferrari that that car is slippery in a straight line. Bad news for James Baldwin and McLaren Shadow, because they're going to have to do the business somewhere a bit imaginative out on the racetrack if they want to find a way past, and they do so desperately need to find a way past, and quickly, Giovanni DeSalvo, because look who's behind now. We have got King in 12th position, Maciej Malinowski not too far adrift as well. So it's very quickly getting into a situation for James Baldwin where he needs to start thinking about defending from cars behind rather than focusing the full attention on these two drivers ahead. And as we've said and seen many times before, Ben, when you get into that position where you're fighting ahead and behind, that's when you really are in the danger zone to get wrapped up in somebody else's mistake, aren't you?
The problem is, in that position in the championship, if this was early part of the season, then you don't look in your mirrors. You look forward, you don't care about what's behind you, and you completely forget that there's any possibility that you'll ever be overtaken. But when you're in a championship fight like this, when you know that a retirement could quite easily mean a loss of championship, you do start creeping in those thoughts of, what if that guy dive bombs me? What if I get taken out by him? If he does so, then I need to leave him space. And so suddenly you're looking backwards. And James Baldwin then, and he'll know this because he's a very proficient karter, as well as a year in British GT, in the real world in GT3, with race victories. He'll know all those philosophies, but ultimately he'll still be dragged in a little bit to just watching the gap to King behind, knowing how good King is. This is interesting. A little bit further ahead, Tonizza is under attack as well.
Yeah, this is Michael Tausch now on the charge of the Unicorns of Love Porsche, number 92, 7th and 8th position on the racetrack. Of course, Tonizza will be removed from this fight when the pit stops kick off in about 5 or 6 minutes time. So Tonizza under a little bit of pressure. He does not need it at this stage. He needs to focus on getting the head down and trying to build as big of an advantage as is possible on those cars behind. Of course, every 10th of a second David Tonizza can win on the racetrack at this stage will put him back out onto the circuit higher up once the pit stops have all cycled through a 10-minute pit window. Don't forget, mandatory to take a minimum of 1 litre of fuel, so it will be a quick stop for these drivers. But don't forget, Spa-Francorchamps is the longest pit lane of the season, so there will be an ultimate loss of significant time, but everybody has to go through that process. As now once again James Baldwin took right to the back of Giovanni DeSalvo in turn right behind Gregor Schill. Schill goes defensive into the chicane. There's nowhere for Baldwin to find a way past. He's going to follow these two cars as close as he can. He knows the big advantage is the long back stretch, which is fully flat out in a GT3 car. Baldwin needs to get a good run now through this corner, which he does. A good run through the next corner. He'll pick up a double slipstream from the BMW on the Ferrari door. DeSalvo runs wide as well. This is a big opportunity now for James Baldwin. Too wide. Has been coming down the back of the circuit now. This is danger zone for Baldwin. He's on the outside through the flat out right-hander of Blanchimont. Can he hold it with the Ferrari? Decides against it. Tucks back into the rear of DeSalvo, heading down into the bus stop. Now the gap for DeSalvo is just too big, and Baldwin there, Ben Constanduras, was using plenty of racing nous to know that it just wasn't worth going 2x2, even if it was tempted to find a way past.
Yeah, because De Salvo has nothing to lose here. He can nail Baldwin off, obviously fairly. You know, you don't want to do it unfairly, but he knows that Baldwin needs to be careful, as we just spoke about. He has to put himself in that situation, and now the gap between Tonizza and Baldwin is growing and growing. So that we're not halfway through the race yet. We've still got that pit stop to come. What Baldwin needs to do here is use the pit stop, and hopefully he's got a good team at Veloce, at McLaren Shadow, to get him out of this traffic when the pit stop window opens, and at least give him one lap to do the undercut or do the overcut. He just needs to make sure that he doesn't pit the same lap as De Salvo or any of the guys around him.
Yeah, this is a replay now of the opening lap. So this is the rundown in the no-name that we spoke about earlier. That is a number 12. Ooh, two cars converging on the St. Peter racetrack. Unfortunately, with a field of 46, there are several further contacts down the running order as well. And that's the problem with such a stacked field. You make a little bit of contact. That was Victor Nicolai in the West Competition Racing Machine making contact, and everybody else gets involved in your instant. Let's have another look at a different angle. That's the Team Fordzilla number 46 machine. Cannot avoid it. One man, thank you, ma'am. We have got a whole concerto of cars spinning left and right like synchronized dancing. Ouch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the problem with qualifying at the back of the field, especially the field of 44 cars. If something happens in the 43 cars ahead of you, then you are much more likely to get caught out. And unfortunately for those guys at the back, having a bit of a roadblock, they had nowhere to go there. So a bit unfortunate, but kind of likely to happen with such a big field.
Yeah, a lot of cars and not a lot of racetrack, and unfortunately these things happen. Now, 35 minutes and 2 seconds and 1 second and 0 seconds. Pit window, ladies and gentlemen, is now open for the next 10 minutes. Every single one of the remaining drivers will have to jump down pit road. Another replay that we're looking at here a little bit further down the running order. That's the number 34 machine, front and centre through Blanchimont, coming down into the bus stop chicane. A car running slow in the middle of the track, and we have got a multiple car contact. So somebody running slow on the racing line. I'm not quite sure exactly why they were going so slow, and Andrea Benedetti unfortunately is the recipient of unwanted damage in the Audis.
Baldwin pitted straight away, so De Salvo ahead of him didn't pit, and Baldwin saw that and gone into the pit straight away. Hopefully that will give him clear track when he comes out to pump in a big lap time and jump De Salvo and maybe even Gregor Schill when they make their pit stops. Expect De Salvo to counter straight away on the next lap.
Now that is an aggressive strategy, Benedict, the opposite to what we tend to see in these races. Baldwin, signal of intent there, he wants those points.
He's got to do it. He's got to do something different to the Ferrari, and knowing that the Ferrari is ahead of him, he had the opportunity to make that choice when the Ferrari couldn't counter him. If he decided to wait until the Ferrari did something and then he did something else, he might run the clock down to 0. So a really good decision there from Veloce, from McLaren Shadow. Baldwin now out of the pits. The question is, how clear a track is it around him, and what kind of lap time can he bang in on this first lap so that he can jump the cars that he was racing with?
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see how this unfolds, and more to the point, what Giovanni De Salvo is going to do about it. He'll be keen to see, as you say, where Baldwin returns to the racetrack, and that'll dictate what he does. We'll look at another replay now on the run. Oh, Rouge, lose the rear end of the Mercedes. Camera goes a little bit mental. There's a BMW in the background spinning in sympathy. And sadly, as we've seen so many times in real and virtual, a car in the middle of the racetrack at the Eau Rouge and into Radion. Bang, 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 bang. You've got yourself a sizable accident. As Osterman now under pressure. This is Dennis Schoninger that we're looking at behind in the Predator R8G Esports Audi R8 LMS. Looks to the outside of the bus stop chicane. The Osterman to the outside, decides to give up and get straight down pit lane. A good move from Jakob Osterman there, minimise time lost. David Tonizza continues on his merry way as we expect him to do, and let's see, does Giovanni De Salvo counter? Yes, he does. De Salvo in the background down pit lane as well, so let's keep our eye on, see where they come out in comparison to James Baldwin, currently running P18 but in clean air.
I don't think that was a good move from Osterman. He should have stayed out and defended and slowed Schoinger down as much as possible. If you have track position, you have the advantage. And by pitting, he has now released those guys behind him that he's kept behind them for the 12 laps we've had so far. And we know that Lamborghini is not necessarily the fastest car on track. So he should have run that pit window down as long as possible. He's not changing driver, he's not changing tyres, he's not even really putting in fuel. So I don't think that was a particularly good move from the Lamborghini, and I think you'll see once all of these pit stops shake out that he might not still be in second position by the end.
It'll be fine again. But the pit window is such a fantastic addition to the SRO Esports Championship. It really does a great job of bringing some more spice, some more drama to the racing out on track. Opens up strategy, opens up opportunities for drivers to do something a little bit different to change their race. Now this is the penalty that David Tonizza earned on the opening lap. So we've gone through those routes, we've gone through onto the Kemmel Straight. That is a Porsche alongside. Just ahead is Eamon Murphy. I'm glad I'm not steward. that is a marginal decision for a 10-second penalty from David Tonizza there. Ben, what's your take?
No, he moved over when there was a car beside him. You can kind of excuse that in the real world, but in the virtual world, they know that there's somebody beside him, and he moved over as though he wasn't there. So no, I totally agree with the stewards there. What we need to see with Baldwin out of the pits and DeSalvo out of the pits is where the two are on track. I think there's a Ferrari ahead of the McLaren. In fact, further ahead. So Baldwin's lost out in those pit stops. He hasn't been able to do a fast lap. He's only just ahead of King. So the strategy that I thought was going to work, that Veloce thought was going to work, that McLaren Shadow thought was going to work, well, hasn't worked. DeSalvo was faster in the pits, and now has a 1.6 second advantage over Baldwin.
High drama indeed. And Ben, just for the benefit of our audience, can you explain a little bit as to why you may be slower in pit lane than one of your rivals? There's no real people there, so makes the difference.
Well, there is different ways of pitting. Baldwin also, let's not forget, did have contact with that Porsche that was bouncing off the wall on the first lap, so he may have chosen to do a repair to get the car back up to speed so that he can then push in the second half of the race. He also may have done it on automatic rather than manual. I'm sure that most of these guys know the fastest way to do a pit stop, but we have seen it in less experienced races where if you go in automatic, it's actually slower than doing a pit stop manually. If you slightly overshoot your box, that can also slow your pit stop down like it would in real life. So there are many different reasons why a pit stop will be a little bit slower, and also, of course, the in and the out lap.
All the fine margins once again for these drivers. You have to maximise every aspect of your performance out on the racetrack to get the big results, and at the moment that is a good work by the Ferrari Driver Academy team and Giovanni DeSalvo to retain track position ahead of James Baldwin. Now the big question that we have got left to answer, well, we've got several questions to answer, but in terms of the championship, is where will David Tonizza come out of the racetrack once he serves his pit stop and that 10-second time penalty. He's going to run it to the checker, sorry, not the checker, at the end of the pit stop window, of course, leave it as late as possible, but this is, it's going to be tight, isn't it?
And this is key, because if this was the second half of the race, that 10-second penalty would be added on at the end of the race. But because he still has a pit stop to do, the pit stop will absorb that 10 seconds. So he will do the pit stop, and then he'll have to wait for 10 seconds, and then he'll go. So the second half of the race, his track position is compromised by that 10-second penalty in a way that if it was in the second half of the race, it wouldn't be. So this is really interesting to see, as you say, where Tonizza comes out, and then how is he able to race. I think, well, let's see, we've still got quite a few people who haven't pitted. There is Tonizza, he's going through the chicane, and he's going for another lap. My next question is, I think Schoinger has got ahead of Osterman in that battle for second position. As we suspected, Osterman, by pitting before Schoinger, has allowed the Audi ahead, and Osterman's dropped down to third position. Doesn't change the championship, but we still have a race that we should talk about. Oh, it's very close, in fact.
Absolutely, Osterman on a charge now seems to be reinvigorated following that pit stop. Of course, the car won't particularly have changed, but it's just an opportunity for the driver to take a few moments stock of their situation. It's a long pit lane here at Spa-Francorchamps, so you've got time to have a little bit of a drink, shuffle around in your cockpit, make sure that you're all nice and comfortable and ready for the second half of the race. And that has done Jakob Osterman the power of good. 13th position on the racetrack, but of course this is racing realistically for a net podium when the whole pit stop cycle has worked its way through. And Dennis Schoninger now, we see him picture in picture, we see him in the Predator R8G Esports Audi at the front of this pack, but Osterman is on a charge. He's trying one way and then the other to find the way past the number 9 machine. Nothing doing in the bus stop chicane. It's great to see a Lamborghini so competitive. In essence, these two cars are exactly the same apart from the bodywork on top of them, so both drivers very broadly have a similar kind of experience underneath them. It's just down to who can find a way past and who can carve out their advantage.
How interesting that in this first half of the race we really felt that Osterman was the cork in the bottle, that everyone was stuck behind him. But now, after the pit stops, Schoninger ahead of Osterman, but Osterman's the man that really giving a lot of hassle to Schoninger. Schoninger having to go super defensive down the Camel Straight. Look at the extra momentum that the Lamborghini has. He's on the outside line, but he's got enough momentum to get the move done into second position. A little bit of a slide on through Lecombe, and maybe he's lost that position, but the Audi goes very wide. And yeah, Lamborghini ahead, even though he's still off the track. What I love about this platform is if you do that, and you can see it was a mistake, you don't get punished like you would on other platforms. You don't get wrists slapped. The computer works out, the platform works out how much gain you have made and then gives you a penalty in relation to that gain. As our Ferrari comes into the pits now, and everybody else, I think, from the top 10 that haven't pitted will make their pit stops now, as the window will only open for the next 20 seconds. It could be quite tight for the last 3 actually, but there is the queue of cars, our top 10 runners all in pit lane.
Now these are critical moments for the driver, Ferrari Driver Academy esports team, and David Tonizza in particular. 5th position on the racetrack at the moment. Of course, that is an artificial position courtesy of Osterman and Schoninger having been down pit road as well. So where will that Ferrari car come out on the racetrack? We know we'll be outside of the points in terms of track position, in terms of position in the race, but track position is going to be key. Will he be close enough to do something about it? He needs, at the bare minimum, 2 points, does David Tonizza, in order to tie for the championship lead. That is considering if James Baldwin does not get points for himself. There he is still very much stuck behind the Ferrari and the BMW, as he has been for the entirety of this race. So Baldwin will be furiously working out the championship connotations based on what is happening. These cars very quickly will pass David Tonizza, who remains stationary down pit road. As a driver, Ben, it is so frustrating, isn't it, knowing how much time you're giving away while everybody else is flat chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel like 10 seconds when you're stationary in pit lane, that's for sure. It does look from the angle of that particular camera that Tonizza is on the F1 pits. No, he isn't. He's on the endurance pit. So now he's at the bottom of Eau Rouge as the cars flash through Eau Rouge. It's pretty close, but Tonizza is going to be behind James Baldwin and his teammate. Now, massive importance for FDA to get this right, to back up James Baldwin as much as possible. And, it's going to be big work for Tonizza to get past King. He's got the Porsche there as well. There's a couple of cars between them. And then he needs to get himself into the points and get 2 more points than James Baldwin. But what I love about the fact that penalty was applied at the start of the race means we can see it on track. Wherever they finish right now is where they will score points, rather than having to do the maths and do a 10-second penalty at the end of the race. We can see it right now. Tonizza needs to get past the McLaren and ultimately needs to get past his teammate as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have got a race in front of us. If you're watching at home and you feel like you need to go and make a drink or dip to the toilet, do not bother, because the next 22 minutes and 55 seconds are going to be spectacular. Darren King that we're looking at now carrying a little bit of damage. So King and Malinowski have made contact with each other. So that has made David Tonizza immediately, without having to do any work on track, has now made his way up into 11th position. Who's the man in front of him? James Baldwin. We have got a dramatic end to this race, to this season, right ahead of us. The cars ahead are James Baldwin and Giovanni Di Salvo. Ben, this could go any way in the next 22 minutes.
Yeah, let's see what the pace is from these three, because that's really important. 22 minutes remaining. You actually would say right now that Di Salvo is not holding James Baldwin up. It actually is Gregor Schill who is holding these two up. Schill not with the pace, creating a big gap between himself and the guys ahead. So it is going to be tricky once Tonizza gets past these three, if he gets past these three, to get any further up the road, because there is actually nearly a 5-second between Tauscher and Schill. But look at the lead of the race as we move our attention a bit further up. Huben is in the lead as he was before the pit stops. Kammerer up to second. Now York's up to third. Gronveld up to fourth. Osterman and Schoinger dropping down to 5th and 6th positions. And here is Tobias Gronveld under attack from Osterman, now in recovery mode, trying to go around the outside of Lecom. Has the inside for the next part. There's not quite enough room. Oh, there's a little bit of contact there. But ultimately, Aston Martin has the inside line for the next part. Runs the Lamborghini wide and still has the inside line for Bruxelles or Fagnes, and that may invite the Audi through the inside as the Lamborghini is held to the outside line. Speaker's corner is next. That's a left-hander, so the Lamborghini can stay to the inside but has failed on the assault of Tobias Gronveld for the moment.
Oh, that is some aggressive driving from the Unicorns of Love Racer, holding on to that position. Good work by Osterman as well to keep the car on straight and narrow. Nikolai with a drive-through penalty that he's serving at this moment in time, down in 21st position. It's starting to get dark here at Spa-Francorchamps, 9:49 p.m. in-game time, 20 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. Huben doing good work at the front of the field, 2 seconds. Here's the advantage from Arti Kammerer, and Bill's Naujok's just a few tenths of a second away in position. Peter Bias Gronvald in 4th position with Osterman for company as well. Dennis Schoninger clinging on to that one as well to make a three-way fight for 4th, 5th and 6th position. Michael Tauscher having a bit of a boring run so far in 7th place, just ahead of this fight for Gregor Schill, Giovanni Di Salvo and James Baldwin, and then David Tonizza trying to close his way onto the pack as once again Osterman under pressure in the Lamborghini is going too wide. Contact between the two of them on the Exeter bus stop. One goes to the estate road, the other one does well to keep the car pointed in the right direction. It started to get spicy, Ben.
Yeah, and if they start inducing penalties, that will bring this battle that we're watching into the points. So actually, whilst this is the championship battle, the McLaren's tucked up behind teammate Ferrari of Tonizza chasing. Actually, if anything happens in front of them, that will then increase the points tally that all these get. Of course, at this second, Baldwin gets more points than Tonizza regardless, so Baldwin becomes champion. But we need to keep an eye on lap times. Baldwin a 2:19.1, Tonizza a 2:19.2. So actually, whilst we think that Di Salvo is holding Baldwin up right now, the pace is pretty similar.
Yeah, these three continue to squabble. Now, whether Giovanni Di Salvo needs to start thinking about backing James Baldwin into David Tonizza, we will find out. Of course, remember everybody at home, if the points are level at the end of this race, currently James Baldwin has a 2-point advantage, but if somehow David Tonizza clears Baldwin, clears Di Salvo ahead, and they are level on points at the checkered flag, the title will fall the way of David Tonizza. So, David Tonizza needs a P9 and a no score from James Baldwin. Currently, James Baldwin's 10th, but Giovanni Di Salvo holds that P9. Is it possible, Ben, that if Tonizza can get himself within striking distance, Ferrari will engineer a way via Giovanni Di Salvo to let his teammate pass the both of them in one fell swoop?
Yeah, but it's not enough. If Tonizza gets past Di Salvo, but because Di Salvo's backed Baldwin up so much, then great, Tonizza is ahead, but will not be enough points to win the championship. He needs to get past Gregor Schill, and Gregor Schill is seemingly the cork in the bottle between himself, Di Salvo and Baldwin, but actually Tonizza doesn't have, from what we've seen so far, the pace to get on terms with these guys. Tonizza dropping another tenth of a second in the middle part of the lap there to 3.7 seconds back. I would have thought Tonizza would have the pace right now, but it's not there. And there's only 17 and a half minutes remaining. Tonizza doesn't have anybody ahead of him. Have we lost somebody ahead of them? Everyone seems to have jumped up one position just then. I think we may have lost somebody ahead.
I think you're right, actually, because that's the fight for 7th, 8th and 9th, and Tonizza into the points. So all that furious calculating is now out of the window because somebody has dropped.
Schoninger.
And it's, Dennis Schoninger out of the race. So a disconnect or some other issue that has promoted Nils Naujoks into second position now, and Artie Camera up onto the bottom step of the podium as well. This is Naujoks and Camera fighting for position amongst themselves. The number 62, of course, is Nils Naujoks, the lead of the two BMW Sim Racing G2 esports machines. So heartbreaking for Dennis Schoninger to be out of the race so close to the end of the season. But now David Tonizza, 10th position, James Baldwin 9th position, Giovanni Di Salvo 8th, and Gregor Schill holding on in P7.
Let's not forget that Nils Naujoks and Arthur Camera are very, very good teammates, whether it be in the endurance series racing in the same car or in the sprint series helping each other out. And I bet you they are on communications with each other. And we saw Naujoks ahead of Camera, we've seen Camera ahead of Naujoks, we just saw Naujoks slipstream pass along the Kemmel Straight quite easily and get into position before the braking zone. I reckon they might be working together to try and get away from Gronveld and try and create a gap so that Gronveld doesn't have the slipstream and that they are able to at least do a second and a third position.
This is going to be another storyline that we will answer in the next 15 minutes and 40 seconds. This is David Tonizza now, car number 95. Remember, he got a lightning start from 11th on the grid to run as high as 7th in the early part of this race. If all had been fair and even, that would have been very much game on for the championship. But of course, Tonizza got involved in an opening lap incident with a Porsche. The judges rightly accosted blame towards the Ferrari Driver Academy esports star, and a 10-second penalty was his reward. Penalty served during the pit stop window, now down in 10th position, but crucially behind his championship rival James Baldwin. Next car up the road at about 4 seconds up the road in P9, but Tonizza does not have the pace to get on par with the McLaren Shadow driver ahead, and this could be the deciding factor of this championship. All James Baldwin needs to do is retain his position on the racetrack. He does not need to attack Giovanni Di Salvo ahead. He does not need to get past Gregor Schill. He just needs to hold station and outscore David Tonizza. Will that be enough for James Baldwin? Will he be content to hold on to his place, or will he be more comfortable finding his way past? We'll find out as the race unfolds. Well, a little squabble down in 14th position between the Lexus and the Honda into La Source.
We've got a different situation now, David. Paul, sorry. Who's David? Because we lost Schoninger, we are now seeing both Di Salvo, Baldwin and Tonizza score points. So, if Tonizza gets ahead of Di Salvo, he now will score enough points to win the championship. He doesn't need to get past Gregor Schill. So, FDA have now got more flexibility in their strategy. Before, it didn't matter what Di Salvo did because Tonizza had to get past Schill, and therefore Schill, Di Salvo, Baldwin had to stay together in this group. Now, all that Tonizza needs to do is get past that Ferrari, need to get past Di Salvo. So Di Salvo now can really start backing James Baldwin up into Tonizza. Tonizza doesn't have the pace on his own to catch this group. That's clear. He's dropped down to 4 seconds as a gap now. It was 3.6 after the pit stops. So Di Salvo now needs to start getting on the throttle later, being slower at the apexes, making sure he's got momentum down the straight so he doesn't get attacked too hard, doesn't defend too hard, but just be a little bit slower everywhere and not attack Gregor Schill. Forget about Gregor Schill now. Tonizza gets past Di Salvo, wins the championship. That's all that matters to FDA.
And the question is, and it's a little bit of a spicy tactic to take, but if you're Giovanni Di Salvo, do you start encouraging James Baldwin to have a little nibble at you, put himself into positions where there's more risk than just simply following behind, much like we're seeing here with Michael Tauscher and Jakob Osterman? Just give him a sniff of an overtake and then just run him out of racetrack in the fairest way possible. Is that a tactic that you're thinking about? As Tauscher, last of the late breakers, into La Source, gets himself alongside and ultimately ahead of the Lamborghini. We've seen the Lamborghini's got plenty of squirt in a straight line, so it's a drag race now into Eau Rouge. This is not the kind of place that you want to go side by side. Tauscher acknowledges the risk and drops back behind Osterman. Great bit of racing down in 5th and 6th position. But back to the pertinent question, if you're De Salvo, do you that enticing James Baldwin into taking more risks than he'd be comfortable with?
Got to do it safely. You've got to do it fairly as well.
Yep.
You don't want to be seen to be forcing another car off the track, but absolutely you need to put James in a dangerous position. You need to put him in a position where he feels uncomfortable, where he might make mistakes. Be unpredictable about where you get on the throttle, where you brake. Not brake test, because that's unfair. Get on the brakes early, that's unfair. But if you are slower in certain sections and make James feel out of his comfort zone, that would be the way to draw Tonizza in. But it's not happening right now. Tonizza continues to fall back from this group. I guess they're all slipstreaming and helping each other. I guess as a 3, they're in a little slipstream train, and Tonizza hasn't got that train to play with. 4.2 back. This is looking worse and worse for FDA, and I'm a little bit amazed that we're not using De Salvo as much as they should. Just on a little word on that pass we saw just a second ago between the Porsche and the Lamborghini. Best thing to do in that situation when you're running side by side going to Eau Rouge is fade out the throttle, make sure you get a good run up through Eau Rouge and Radion, and then nail them at La Combe. You're never going to really do the pass in through that fast section of turns. If you do, you're compromising your speed. So as you're getting to the approach, come out the throttle, hit in the slipstream up through the hill, and then slipstream and use the momentum that you've gained to get past. That's the way to do a pass into Les Combes, not try and do it when you're actually in the Eau Rouge Radion sequence.
Absolutely, and that's the tactic we saw from Robbie Stapleford a few laps ago. While the cars ahead were squabbling through the Eau Rouge and Radion complex, Stapleford just used the momentum to get a nice double slipstream down the Kemmel Straight and take position before we even got to the braking zone of Le Combe. But this is Michael Tauscher once again having another nibble at the back of Osterman. A drive-through penalty for Tiskovic in 12th position as well, just popped up on the screen. Terry Gamel and Ayanori Rose. Also, Tauscher, too much into the barrier at Eau Rouge, off of the racetrack, thankfully away from the racing line, so no danger to the following cars. But Tauscher asked too much of his machine through Eau Rouge and Radion, and that is the consequence. And everybody in the points now moves at 1, and Michael Tauscher, that is sadly pretty much race over for the Unicorns of Love 92.
James Baldwin also was well off track when he approached that crash. Whether that was because he had a little swapper or whether he was just going, okay, I'm going to be as far off the racing line as possible just in case there's a crash. But he was well offline there, and all you need to be, as we saw, is he missed the apex, Tauscher there, missed the right-hand apex, offline, not as much grip on the rear end. The rear end starts to slide, you try and collect it, and whether it be the virtual or the real world, the outcome is the same. Heavy into the left-hand side, bounce across the track, and luckily for Tauscher and the rest of the field, he ended up off the track. But so many times we've seen that accident be a car in the middle of the circuit and cause chaos. Today, this time, it was okay.
Yeah, that was a very, very common accident here at Spa-Francorchamps, and as you say, mightily lucky for the chasing pack that wasn't a bigger incident involving more drivers. Meanwhile, Maciej Malinowski, because of that one, has moved up into 11th position, but crucially, Tiskovic ahead has a drive-through penalty that he needs to serve within the next couple of laps. Here we go, incident on lap 16 involving cars 38 and 992 is a racing incident, and cars involving 26 and 24 a drive-through penalty, as we said, for Matthias Tiskovic. So up into the points, soon to be straight back out again. Now, Tonizza, 9th position, is going to score 3 points. James Baldwin, 9th position, score 2 points. James Baldwin in 8th will score 3 points. So it's still not enough for Tonizza, but during all that drama, Ben, he's closed it to 3.8 seconds, so that gap's gone down a little bit, but there's a lot to ask in a short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It was 4.2, it went down to 3.6 7, and now it's back up to 4 again. So I'm really surprised that we're not seeing more from Gianni Di Salvo here in terms of affecting James Baldwin. They're playing it very, very fair. They're not working as a team here, and they are really just playing the game and doing seeing the individual performances of each driver. Obviously, the slipstream effect is helping Baldwin and De Salvo from Gregor Schill, and Tonizza just no way. He's not able to catch, and with 7.5 minutes remaining, all right, all he needs to do is get in front of his teammates. There is still time, but De Salvo doesn't want to be binning seconds a lap. He wants to be binning tenths a lap. Just, here. Don't get on the throttle quite as early as you would, so that Baldwin gets on the throttle, sees the Ferrari, is not on the throttle, and has to back out of it. That's the way to do it fairly. It's not brake early and scare the McLaren off the road. But we are. I think that's fair. I don't know. There's probably people in the chat saying that's unsportsmanlike and everyone's for themselves. But for me, you've got FDA, you've got Ferrari as a brand behind you as well. You want to win the championship. You want to be David Tonizza, who's won F1 Esports for Ferrari and SRO Esports for Ferrari. How amazing would that be? And you need Ferrari to help you out. And at the moment, don't feel that they are able to do so.
Yeah, of course, Ferrari Driver Academy looking for the clean sweep, having secured the first of the Endurance Series Championships this season as well. So it'd be great for them if they can take home the title for the Sprint Series. But let's talk about James Baldwin as well for a moment. He kind of was in the shadows a little bit, so to speak, McLaren shadow, for the first few races of the season, and has really come on strong in the second half of the championship. He's very much the form man of the category. So Baldwin has had a sensational year. He's already taken the GT3 class of the British Esports Championship right at the very start of the year to open up our season of racing. So an incredible performance. No matter what happens from both of these drivers, either Baldwin or Tonizza will be very, very worthy champions indeed. And with 5 minutes 30 seconds left on the clock, we're soon to find out who that is going to be. But a word for Gregor Schill, Ben. Not really had the pace of his BMW teammates, but hasn't he done a fantastic job to keep that 72 ahead of these two drivers?
Yeah, Gregor Schill with just 2 point scores across the season. And it took till round 6 to get 1 point on the board. James Baldwin is the only man to score in every single round of the championship, even if in round 1 it was only 1 point. David Tonizza had 2 rounds where he scored nothing. So consistency showing to be key. Even if Baldwin's early results were not quite as starring as Tonizza, it took Baldwin a few races, it took McLaren Shadow a few races to get themselves up to speed. But Baldwin did, even in those early races, score some points. And so that is why he is up there with 3 wins to his name. Tonizza also has 3 wins to his name. Key, and the reason why if they draw on points, it would be Tonizza's. Tonizza has had 2 second positions, whereas Baldwin has only had 1. And that is what, at the moment, would make the difference.
Yeah, but we're a long way away from needing to worry about that at this moment in time, because so far James Baldwin is doing exactly what he needs to do to take home this championship. There's only 4 minutes left on the clock, so a couple of laps remain, and then the SRO Esports Europe Sprint Series Championship will come to its conclusion for 2021. Gregor Schill still holding on from Giovanni Di Salvo. Matis Tiskovic still needs to get down pit lane and serve that drive-through penalty down in 10th position. And this man, Nicholas Hoban, for the GTWR R8G Academy Audi R8 LMS, the 122 machine, from second on the grid, had a very combative opening few laps with the Lamborghini, but came out at the other end very much as our race leader, and since that time has just managed the gap. 1 or 2 pretenders in second and third have swapped positions over the course of the race, trying to challenge for this race lead, but Hoban has all the answers and more. A stunning performance actually for Nicholas Hoban, and this will be by far and away the best result of his season, and what a great way to end a campaign and go into the off-season and the holiday period.
Yeah, it's not a man that I've commented on because he didn't really come on for or even get qualified into the races until the second half of the season. So only with 28 points to his name coming into this race, and they were from round 7, 8 and 9 of the championship. I guess it's what could have been for him had he been able to qualify, had he chosen to qualify in the early part of the season. And he will get himself into the top 10 with this result. Really great result. Nice and paced at the moment with 2.5 minutes remaining. Nils Naujoks in second position is closing the gap. And a word on Nils Naujoks, I think this result in second position would promote him to third in the standings. So that's for a man who's driving a car that isn't necessarily favoured particularly well in ACC. That is a really, really good result and a great team effort from G2, from BMW Sim Racing, from Red Bull as well. They've kind of got a little bit of Red Bull on the car too. They have from the very beginning worked as a team, as a cohesive unit with Schill and Camera and Naujoks flying the flag for that team and doing a really good job. So it looks as though he will overtake Kevin Siggy, with Siggy outside the points for Team Redline in his McLaren, although Siggy is also a BMW Sim driver in other events, just to confuse things. But Siggy, yeah, he will drop down, I think, into 4th position in the championship, or maybe even 5th behind DeSalvo with a no-point score today.
Yeah, spectacular, robust season from Nils Naujoks, maximising everything he possibly can from what is, as you say, not necessarily the most competitive package out there in this championship. We're heading now into the final lap of the race. Giovanni DeSalvo still trying to find a way past Gregor Schill. James Baldwin still very firmly holding on, trying to stay out of trouble and bringing the car home for those all-important points. 4.3 seconds David Tonizza has dropped away from these now in 9th position. He knows that it is pretty much game over in terms of a championship, barring something dramatic happening and the cars ahead of him. That's still entirely possible. We've seen things happen all the way down to the final corner of the final lap, but it's been a pretty fitting end to the season. I think, Ben, it's been a great race for what has been a great year as DeSalvo just picks up some sparks as we head into the final few moments.
Tonizza's going to kick himself, though, isn't he? Because that replay that we saw, you know, the overhead view was very clear that he moved across on the Porsche when it was there. And there is no excuse for that. If you're in the real world, you don't have that perception. You don't have that. You really don't see very much in a real car because you've got the seat restraints to the left and right of you. And he would never have seen a car alongside him at that point. It would have been a blind spot in a real world car. But in ACC, you've got this radar system. You can see where cars around you are. You see them turn red if they are overlapping you. And so you have no excuse to move across on another car. And so Tonizza will be so frustrated that happened, because outside of that, he was in a position to win the championship today. He would have been in a position, if you add or take away 10 seconds to his time, he would win the championship today. He had a better qualifying position. He hasn't had the pace in the second half of the race at all. And it's very clear that he's losing ground to the guys ahead of him. But that has ultimately been the undoing of a title for him. A silly, small move on an insignificant Porsche, and that means he loses the championship.
Yep, such are the moves that make or break a championship. And at the front of the field, Nicholas Huben comes through the bus stop chicane for the final time, for the final race of the season. A dominating, robust, strong performance at the front of the field. And Nicholas Huben is a first-time winner in the GT World Challenge Esports Europe Sprint Series for GTWR R8G Academy. As James Baldwin on the final lap makes his way past Giovanni DeSalvo to take the championship in 6th position. James Baldwin is our new champion in the endurance of the sprint series for SRO. A fantastic performance, a fantastic year, a fantastic new champion. David Tonizza crosses the line at despondent 9th position. That all went wrong right at the very, very start, as we're seeing now. What a phenomenal performance from each and every one of our drivers, and James Baldwin be delighted with that end result. Tonizza
already bails himself into pit lane. That is a sign of a man frustrated, and disappointed. But ultimately, James Baldwin, a British GT champion in the virtual world, a winner in the real world. And you can see in the right-hand side there, shame we just cut away from that, just how much it means to him. Talking on away to his, probably his guys on Twitch, actually. I'm sure he's streaming this. And the guys at McLaren Shadow. And so happy with his performance. He's so involved in all kinds of different esports. He is a real ambassador for esports. Being the world's fastest gamer in Season 2 means you are, across all different platforms, an incredible gamer. He's proven he's an incredible driver in the real world. And now he's got a title to his name. Potentially one of the biggest, most significant esports competitions there is. And it's only year one of this incredible championship that SRO have put their backing into. And James Baldwin has got 2 titles. The 2 titles he could enter. He couldn't enter anymore. All he needs to do is win the Endurance Championship, and he's got all 3.
Yeah, fantastic season, a fantastic driver, and a nicer guy you could not wish to meet in the world of virtual racing. So, as Ben said, very much a fabulous ambassador for our virtual motorsport and a thoroughly deserving champion as well. It all came good at the second half of the season. Baldwin's put in a very consistent performance up to that point, and then just found the lap time. Put in, never caved to the pressure, showed incredible speed, delivered incredible results as well. And the end result is, the reward is the ultimate reward of them all, and that is to be the 2021 GT World Challenge Sprint Series eSport champion. An accolade that he will be rightly incredibly proud of as well, for what has been a phenomenal series in arguably the most difficult esport competition currently around for GT3 specification cars. So an incredible stuff. But let's not forget Nicholas Hubert as well, taking the race victory, a first race victory of the season. And that, Ben's going to be inspiring confidence going into what will be, I'm sure, another very strong year next year as well.
Yeah, the whole of the second half of the season for him should be, because we didn't see him at the first half of the season, and he got himself qualified, got himself into a decent point scoring position. He had to re-qualify for this event, and there was that contact. Look at actually how lucky James Baldwin was, because he got squeezed by the Porsche and then a Williams Mercedes on his inside as well. So Baldwin had contact with the Porsche that was bouncing all over the place, and kept his nerve bouncing because of the contact with David Tonizza. And we shouldn't take anything away from Tonizza as well. Yes, he's a real aficionado of ACC. He loves it. But in the second half of the season, he's had to keep both championships going. And obviously, Formula One, incredibly important for FDA, had to, and such a huge amount of effort goes into being at your very best in Formula One. They do so many hours in practice, like they do in this, finding a setup and all the rest of it. So he's had to spread his efforts across both championships in the last couple of months. Whether that's the reason why he did 2 no scores and didn't quite have the performances of the early part of the season, who knows? Ultimately, some people say that to be a good esports racer, you have to be good across different platforms. But James Baldwin certainly is that. Tonizza is that as well. But between the two of them, it has been an amazing fight of huge titans of esports. And can't wait to speak to James in a second. But before we do, let's speak to our race winner.
So that is it. We've got Nicholas Huben with us in the virtual commentary box. Nicholas, race winner of the final round of the season. Congratulations. That was a spectacular race.
Yeah, thank you. It was pretty exhausting. I'm unbelievable happy to win the fucking last race. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, fantastic stuff. And we saw some real robust driving from yourself against the Lamborghini in the opening few stages. Can you talk us about what was going through your head as a driver in that sort of scenario?
The first goal was not get eaten by the BMWs on the first straight. And then originally my plan was to stay behind the Lambo, and maybe his tires will rear faster than my one. But yeah, luckily he had a little slip into the more or less forced corner for us, so I could go past. But he was unbelievable fast on the straights, and yeah, with a little bit of contact, I was able to get through again, and then it was more or less teamwork when Dennis was fighting him, and was getting myself a little of a gap.
Yeah, fantastic race and fantastic speed as well in the 1-2-2. What's different between today and previous races? Where's this extra lap time come from?
Well, I think in Nürburgring I was pretty competitive as well. In Imola it was also pretty good. And Barcelona is just a track I just hate. And I did not train for, to be honest. So, that's why I was so slow there. And today it was just amazing. Amazing race, and probably one of the best ones I've ever driven.
Yeah, it's fantastic to watch it from the commentary box, and I'm sure everybody at home would agree. And that's a great way to end the year as well, in anticipation of maybe seeing you again next season.
Of course, but then from the first race on.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Nicholas Oban, a fantastic drive, thoroughly entertaining, and a well-deserved race victory. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Fantastic stuff. Just want to take a moment to apologise for the slight mishap in the language to the folks at home there. But Ben, that was such a great performance from Nicholas out on track, wasn't it? Really, really deserved those 25 points. Oh, we seem to have lost Ben momentarily. So while he's making his way back, I believe we'll be speaking. In fact, no, Ben is back. So great performance there from Nicholas, wasn't it?
Yeah, I muted myself and then tried to talk whilst muted, which is...
Oh, we've all been there. We've all been there.
We've all been there. As we said earlier, great performance, great fights, attacking that Lamborghini. Patience was there as well, and as you say, going to be great for next season to keep that momentum going. Obviously part of Romain Grosjean's team as well, with Predator backing, so he has all of the tools to really start flying the flag for R8G that is in all different kinds of esports, but ultimately hasn't shown their best hand, I suppose, in ACC so far.
Fantastic stuff. Now, I believe we are joined by somebody very special indeed. The 2021 GT World Challenge Sprint Series eSport champion, James Baldwin. Congratulations, man. What a result.
Thank you very much, guys. I can't believe it. I thought I'd messed it up in quali. The race was probably one of the worst races pace-wise I've ever done, but it just somehow came together. David unfortunately got a penalty. Yeah, I'm relieved. I'm very relieved.
Yeah, it was definitely very intense. I mean, talk us through how you cope with being so close to the teammate of David Tonizza for the entirety of the race. Is that a worry for you? Did you think any shenanigans might start kicking off?
Definitely. I feel like Rosberg felt in 2016. Yeah, I had to just play it I had to really be really patient, and that's really hard to do. You always want to get on with it, overtake people and stuff, but I said to myself, as long as David's not behind me, I'm not going to overtake, which is a pessimistic way of looking at it, but I think it was the smart thing to do. So
now, we caught it on camera, the end of it on camera. Did you sneak past to Salvo at the bus stop on the last lap? What happened there?
They had it coming together on the final corner, and I was really careful. I thought he might, spin and hit me or something. But yeah, I don't know. Just very fortunate. How I finished 6th in that race blows my mind, I'll be honest. But I'm very happy. Lost for words, really. 53 points back and somehow won. So I can't believe it.
Yeah, the comeback has been absolutely sensational. Now, I dare say 99.999% of the audience watching today will never find themselves in the position that you're in as a champion of a series like this. Tell us a little bit what's going through your head. How do you feel? And is it relief? Is it euphoria? Or is it just job well done, move on to the next thing? What goes through your mind?
No, I'm very reflective right now. I think honestly, of all the series I've ever competed in virtually, this has to top it off, because the level now in 2021 is so high, and this series particularly. And yes, other drivers maybe have put their focus elsewhere, and I've been more dedicated to ACC. But regardless of that, I just wanted to show that I could still win something fairly big after coming back from real racing. Because most people, they go from virtual to real and don't really go back. Whereas I wanted to do that and do it well. So this is a massive box ticked as far as I'm concerned, and I'm just so happy, really happy.
Yeah, it's been sensational to watch you all season and commentate on pretty much all of the races too. What next for you? What next for James Baldwin? We've seen the replay actually of the contact. Wow, man! Wow, that's the first time I've seen that. That was close.
In terms of what's next for me, I've got the Le Mans Virtual tomorrow, which I've not really practiced for, the Nordschleife, so that's going to go well. I don't honestly know yet. I'm trying to get back into real racing in 2022, so there's a few plans there, but hopefully back in the real world, but obviously still doing my sim racing as well, as long as I feel like I can do it. I mean, I'm really enjoying it. Although the pressure's insane, it's really fun. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, the very best of luck in your endeavours on the real world. James, I'll just say now, a superb season. You're an incredible ambassador for the sport that we all enjoy. And go on and have a couple of refreshing libations and enjoy yourself because you've deserved it. What a season. Well done, 2021 champion, sir. Thank
you very much. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks very much, James. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. You've seen the crowning of a new champion in the most spectacular way possible. And Ben, it's been quite an emotional time. This series is over. It's been incredible, hasn't it? Absolutely deserving champion, fabulous racing, and every single one of these drivers are a star.
I love the fact that we started off this season with people that we knew in ACC that we thought would be the pinnacle. And then we saw people coming across from different platforms and showing their hand. Unfortunately, we lost some as the season went on, but as James said, he stuck with it, and he has been the most consistent, regardless of how good or bad everyone else around him has been. He scored in every single round. He kept his head. And even though he was in the real world last year and focusing on trying to create a career in GT3 racing, he's come back and sealed the deal in the virtual world, which surely will encourage somebody out there to give him another chance in GT3 racing next year in the real world, and maybe alongside a virtual competition as well. He is, as you said, a great ambassador for the sport, a very articulate, thinking man, and absolutely the perfect person to call our European champion.
Fantastic stuff. So, from myself, Paul Jeffrey, and Ben Constanduris, from the entire team here behind the scenes at the SimGrid and our broadcast partners, Fanatec, AWS, Pirelli, Kunos Simulazione, AK Esports, SimGrid, SRO, and of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione, for the final time this season. It has been an honour and a pleasure to have you with us. Cannot wait to get started again in 2022. Take care. Hope you've enjoyed the ride. Bye-bye.